almost
make some
ready. I'm
pancakes,
really
please?
hungry. Give me your hand. Make me some food. Daddy, can you make?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Daddy Can You Make? I've made my own meatballs many times and tried various recipes, but trying to make a gluten-free option took some tries to come out satisfactory. It turned out to be an experience of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Anyways, I will detail the good recipe last, so if you'd like to jump straight there, feel free to use the chapter markers in the video. The first attempt, by all accounts, turned out bad. We still had to eat it, but it was not great. I attempted using 3 pieces of gluten-free bread, cutting off the crust, like making a sandwich for a toddler, don't ask me why. Then I cut the bread up into small pieces. I realized after the fact that I probably should have toasted the bread first to remove some of the moisture and help it soak up the 3/4 cup of milk I added. A key to a good meatball is the ratio of eggs and breadcrumbs to pounds of meat, so I added 1 egg per pound of ground meat and then added other spices and herbs in a bowl. Here I did a smaller batch for my first attempt, so I used 1 pound of ground turkey and 1 pound of ground sausage and then mixed it all up together using my hands. I used water to moisten my hands and help prevent sticking, and a cookie scooper to scoop out even proportions of the meatball mixture. The consistency felt okay and the meatballs rolled out fairly well, but after baking and adding my homemade sauce, they turned out rather stodgy and I wasn't thrilled with the texture. My second attempt was an ugly embarrassment. I even messed up the settings in my camera and my video lighting turned out bad. Anyways, I only used 2 pieces of gluten-free bread this time, but also added ½ cup of breadcrumbs as well since I did a bigger batch with 3 pounds of meat. I added more milk for a total of 1 cup, thinking that the breadcrumbs would soak up more. Next, I also grated 1/4 of an onion for moisture and flavor. I've seen it done in other recipes and wanted to add it here to try, but I think the added moisture ended up being too much. Next, I added some chopped garlic and parsley. For the meat, I added 2 pounds of ground turkey and 1 pound of mild Italian sausage. Then 3 whole eggs, again 1 egg per each pound of meat, and the rest of the spices, salt, pepper, and some additional garlic powder. After mixing the ingredients together using my hands, I could tell that the texture was pretty wet. I should have added more breadcrumbs at this point, but I left it. I rolled out the meatballs and hoped they would hold together, but I was doubtful. Not a good feeling when cooking. My doubts were confirmed after baking. The meatballs were a sloppy, ugly mess, almost like they were melting. Almost a little like Jabba the Hutt. Gross. They were too wet, either with not enough breadcrumbs to bind or too much liquid so they would not hold together. Moving on. Learning from my previous mistakes, I set out for a final attempt to improve upon my efforts. I first set up an extra large bowl for more mixing space. Then, this time, I toasted 2 slices of gluten-free bread before breaking them up into smaller pieces. Next, I added an additional 1 cup of gluten-free breadcrumbs, followed up by 1 cup of oat milk. Use normal milk if you like. I left the breadcrumbs to soak in the milk for about 5 minutes before adding in 2 pounds of ground turkey and then 1 pound of ground Italian sausage. Note that I personally prefer not to use the ground meat in the tubes because it's so compressed and seems to be wetter, but sometimes you use what is available. I then added in 3 whole eggs, followed up by the rest of the herbs and spices. Instead of grating an onion, I put in 1 teaspoon onion powder, then 1 1/4 teaspoon salt, and 1/2 teaspoon ground black pepper. Now we finally chopped up about 1/4 cup of fresh parsley and then 2 to 3 garlic cloves, finely chopped. Once everything was added in the bowl, we now had plenty of space to mix it all together by hand. I tried not to overmix it, but also make sure that it was evenly combined. This time the consistency of the meatball mix was much better. You can see it rolled well and wasn't too wet, so it stuck together nicely. Satisfied, I put some plastic wrap over it to allow it to rest for 10 to 20 minutes. I normally don't let it rest, but I had the time. Now, to roll out our meatball goodness, I wore disposable gloves this time, which really helped for cleanup, but also was great for rolling out a nice, smooth meatball. And, well, I forgot to spray my baking sheet, so a nice helper came to help out. All set. In place of water, I used some olive oil to grease my hands, which really helped with rolling out a nice meatball. Preventing some sticking on the tray, added flavor, and trapped in some moisture. It worked really well. Soon we have 2 full trays of beautifully rolled meatballs. Once you get the process down, it doesn't take too long to roll them out. Though this is a big family size, so there are a lot. And even without a big family, it's nice to have leftovers. To make them lighter in fat, instead of pan fry, we bake them at 375 degrees for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, I took them out and flipped each meatball over and then put them back in the oven to bake for another 6 to 8 minutes, until you see them nicely brown on the outside and start to lose some of their moisture and fat residue. The meatballs should be close to fully cooked, but they really don't have to be all the way, as we will add them into the sauce to continue cooking and soak up some of that saucy flavor too. Yes, I add them into the sauce 1 by 1 or 2 by 2. You could probably dump them in, but just in case to keep the integrity of the meatball, we set them in nicely into their saucy bed for a nice simmer. After adding in our meatballs to my homemade marinara sauce, I let them simmer for at least 30 minutes. Now to try it out. I put together a salivating meatball sandwich. Homemade ciabatta loaf with meatballs and marinara sauce,
fresh mozzarella,
basil,
and a drizzle of balsamic vinegar. I'm not sure what my hand looks like it's shielding my sandwich. I was really concentrating so I wouldn't put too much vinegar, but it poured out faster than I expected anyways. Also, maybe it's because my family was eyeing my precious sandwich like a pack of hungry wolves ready to pounce. But it's my sandwich.
And there it is. The meatballs finally turned out really good. You can eat them in a sandwich, pour them over some spaghetti, rice, whatever you like. Thanks so much for watching. I really do hope you like this recipe, and I appreciate all the support. From my kitchen to yours, happy baking. I was actually so hungry at the end of this video that I neglected to get a video of me eating the sandwich. It disappeared pretty fast. So just imagine me eating the sandwich and how good it tastes.